welcome everyone. Just remember this session is being recorded and will be uploaded later on our YouTube channel. So in case you want to watch it again, the beauty of it that today you will have the opportunity to ask your questions and raise any comment or any doubt that you may have. The only thing is that we will ask you to wait until the end to raise your questions. As we are lucky, some of them we will answer them during today's presentation, today's webinar. Well, by the way, I forgot to mention that my name is Inigo Cruz. I'm part of the YSE Europeos team, and with me is Stichu, that it's on the other screen. So
Hello.
say hello, and so on. So let's begin. So let's see the most common questions in the framework of this European week that we are trying to celebrate, 9th of May, the Europe's Day. So we were trying to cover with this webinar and tomorrow webinar all of your questions and all of your doubts about regarding the CAST possibilities, the ways to start to work in the European institutions, not only as an officer, as a functionary, but also with other possible contracts. So let's see how can we do it. Let's see what are the main questions that usually we find in our experience helping candidates to get their objective of become part of the European institutions. So, So this is important to say, the following webinar is based on real experiences, in the sense that everything that we are trying to explain today, and the selection of questions we try to cover is purely based on what we have seen is the most common cases, your main doubts, and the main issues that we have come across during all this time. By the way, what you see on the right of your screen is our croqueta. It is our trainee. Let's call it our Blue Book trainee in YSE Europeos. So it's quite small but tasty and smart in relation with the EPSO procedures and how to find a job in the European institutions. So that's why pay attention when it's there on your screen, because it's probably marking you the most important, most relevant parts. And of course, the document that we're using today is going to be available with the video recording. So you don't need to worry about it. You don't need to start doing screenshots, because you will have a copy on PDF of the following document. Okay, so yep, so that was it. So let's answer the following question. What's happening? What's going on in the current situation in EPSO, in the European institutions, and to find a job there? Because there has been a lot of changes. So a couple of news that are important to take into account. Where should they start? What are the elements that I need to understand first? And then the first thing that you should know, the types of contract. This is important because, especially if you are new in trying to find your place in the European institutions, maybe some of you already are very familiar with all the type of contracts, you know everything about this, but maybe others don't. So it's always good to recapitulate and to see the different possibilities. So also about the CAST process, how it's going to be, and also the temporary agent possibility. So more or less, what are the expectations, the standard situation, the standard process? Yes, doesn't mean that there's much standardization sometimes, but still, let's see the average process. So we will pay special attention to the tests that you will face and a few tips on how to pass them. The candidacy, the application, the CBT, computer-based test, the written test, yes, could be a possibility. The interview, and also where do you look for new opportunities, for vacancies, for positions, right? Final, last but not least, how from YSE Europeos we can help you the best way we can. And of course, what else do you want to ask? Of course, at the end, you always have the word, and you will have the opportunity to ask any question, any element that was not answered during today's webinar. So let's start. What's happening? So, well, we have gone on a bumpy road. This is what is happening nowadays in EPSO. Probably you're familiar with the problems that EPSO suffer with the platform, with the electronic platform they use for the exams, known as Prometric. So the exams didn't work at all. There were a lot of issues with the competitions, also with the cast, so everything got frozen and blocked. That triggered the need of finding a new subcontractor that now it's in the process. And in the meantime, EPSO announced that they will have a midterm solution, a midway solution, finding another platform. Most likely scenario, it hasn't been confirmed, but apparently seems that they're going to use the platform used by the commission, that is TestWe call, and they will use that one to take the exams. The good news for that is that EPSO announced that now the CAST exam, the one of reference that we will talk a bit later, a bit more, will take place again on the 14th of June. This is a foreseen date. It's not fixed. It's not cast in stone, but has been announced like that. So that means that it triggers the departing signal to begin again on the cast process after several months of being frozen on that part. So this is important to know that what's happening. Also in the framework of the competitions that are reopening again. So that's where we say that the case is on the 14th of June, that we see that exams are coming back. Everything is coming back to life after a long winter in the competitions, but also it has a second consequence that people didn't always connect it, but it's clear. The fact that there were no competitions active, that there were no competitions delivering new list of reserve, new potential recruits to become officers, made difficult to the institutions to find the staff, to find new officers. So they have to replace, to complete their ranks with with the staff that they were not officials, meaning contractual agents, temporary agents, this kind of contracts that are not fixed, they are not undetermined, but they are determined in time, limited somehow. So that is one of the consequences. That's why if you look into the European institution web pages, you will see plenty of opportunities, professional opportunities nowadays with all kind of contracts. So this is very important to retain, and this is part of the information shared by EPSO lately. So that is one of the situation that's going on. Very briefly, but good enough to contextualize and to know where we are. So, and where should they start? So asking yourselves, maybe all of you who are attending today's webinar have a clear answer to this. Do you want to work in international institutions? Do you identify yourself with European project? Do you want to work away from home? Assuming that none of you who are listening to us are already in their home in Belgium, meaning that you're coming from a different country, it's very likely that you will have to move from your country of origin, maybe Italy, Spain, Hungary, Finland, to Belgium, to Luxembourg. So this is part of the process. Working with other cultures, dealing with broad topics, continuous learning activity, and also willing to work hard. I mean, ask yourself these 6 questions. If the answer is yes, please continue. Keep to the be with us for the rest of the webinar. And if the answer is no, well, maybe probably this is not your job, not your dream job. Well, who knows? Maybe you're feeling just curious and you want to hear a little bit more about this. So let's see what else we can say, especially covering one of the questions that we get from the candidates. Can I work from my home country? I already raised the issue that, okay, are you willing to move to Brussels, to Luxembourg? Most likely scenario, but how come? It's not possible to work in my own country. Yeah, it could be, but it's very unlikely. It's not the most likely scenario. Just if we take a look to the figures of the European Commission and the place of employment, see that Brussels and Luxembourg, they take the lion's share. There's more than 75% of the staff working in the Commission, it's in Brussels and Luxembourg. Only a few are not in Brussels and Luxembourg, but still in Europe. This is important to take into consideration. This is the in red area, 10%, but also more or less 11% are outside of the European Union, meaning in the European delegations. Remember that the European Commission has more staff outside Europe working for the European Commission than the External Action Service. The External Action Service is around 3,000, while the Commission is 3,600. So just to give you an overview of the places where you could work. Of course, still not being an officer, but working for the European Commission or the institutions is possible across Europe. Yes, other possibilities. Well, the Joint Research Center, they have six places or sites across Europe. The External Action Service that I just mentioned offers several possibilities. Brussels, but also outside Brussels, the European Parliament, the other institutions, the Council, that could be, but the Council is smaller than the Parliament even. So you see there the figures that are quite recent. So chances of not working in Brussels or in Luxembourg are dim, at least if we want to do work for the main institutions. There is another option. Of course, I just mentioned the GRC, the External Action Service, but also we always have the opportunity to work for the European agencies. So for working in the European agencies, it's the same processes than the ones that we are going to discuss afterwards. Exactly the same thing, because they use the contract agents, they use the temporary agents, they use the friendships opportunities. So all these opportunities are valid for the agencies, but it's important to remember that they're located all scattered all across Europe. And they're quite specialized. And you see also that they will, and the opportunities, the possibilities, the chances are always proportional to the size of the agency. If you go to the ones on the top, UIPO or Intellectual Property Agency or Frontex, you see a lot of people, a lot of vacancies, a lot of movement. Well, if you go to the small agencies, well, if you have a staff of 100, I mean, the opportunities of having a free spot or a free vacancy, it's reduced. So always being realistic, but I mean, all options are open. Just a question of knowing that our options or chances are higher some areas than others. Okay, just as a way of showing you all the different aspects of the different paths in order to work for the European institutions, whether in one of the main institutions or in an agency or in other entity of the European Union. Hope this is clear. I didn't want to spend too much time on this. So, and now let's go to the interesting facts, to the key elements that we need to know to deal with this, the types of contract. This is the basic argot, slang, words that you need to learn when you start to look for a position in the European institutions. And you need to identify the type of contracts to know what are your chances, what is the procedure, what can you expect, what can you do, or what do you need to do to present on this vacancy. So as a way of introducing a little bit more the topic, let me show you what we are talking about. If we take again the Commission as reference with the latest data that they have shared from this year, 2024, we see that approximately 35% of the people employed in the Commission are increasing because the number of officers is reducing because of they are retired mostly, and then some of them are replaced by non-officer, by temporary contracts. So meaning that at least 35%, interesting time, are non-officers. So it's what we are here today to talk about that 35%, the opportunities. And we see there that these opportunities could be mostly coming from the contract staff, contract agent, cast, maybe you hear about it, around 24%, nearly 24%. Then we got the temporary staff on different levels, AD officer, higher level, OST assistant level. So it's about 5% more or less for the AD. So last but not least, another possibility that we have here is the seconded national expert. Wait a minute, what is a seconded national expert? We'll see that. This is a person who is working for a national administration and it's coming to the European institutions to work for the European institutions for a while, in 1, 2, 3, up to 5, 6 years. So in total, we have the 5 different paths. I mentioned the temporary agents, the contract agents. We have our croqueta there, marking the first type of contract, the second type of contract, the temporary. Another one that I didn't mention because it doesn't appear or is not reflected on the graphic, but it's there, is the interimaire or interim. This is a short-term contract. I will give you a few more details now. Then the GPP, Junior Professional Program, and similar. This is a new way of joining the ranks of the staff of the European Commission and also the European Parliament. So it's not, you cannot get in there from the outside, let's say, not from the street, but if you're already on the inside, it's a way of staying a bit longer or improve your professional conditions in the institutions. And last but not least, what I mentioned, the national experts, the SNE, second the national expert, but also there is another type, short-term, very short-term, the NEPT. So briefly on the contracts. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, in the case of the officials, it's not for today. We will talk about that, about the competencies tomorrow. Yeah. First thing that you need to have in mind for any process, we don't care if it's for a cast, for a temporary, for interimaire, or GBB, for secondary national expert. You're great. Your CV is great. Guys, your experience, everything you can contribute to the institutions, I have no doubt, we have no doubt that can be great for the institutions. But the problem is that they don't know. And there are a lot of hundreds, minimum dozens, but hundreds of candidates who also have good profiles and they want to work for the European institutions. So how to select among all these people, how to do it? Well, you need to standardize the process. You need to create systems that allow you to select among hundreds of candidates. So at the end, it's a process that doesn't allow to show all your differences, all your uniqueness, but it's a process where you need to adapt to explain the institution, the hiring entity, the hiring people, how valuable you are, how good you are, what are your strengths and your extra elements to work in the European institutions. So it's important to have in mind because we insist right from here because it creates a lot of frustration among the candidates, this part. The fact that, okay, but I got 2 masters, I got 10 years of working experience. They don't appreciate it. I mean, they do, but still there are those candidates, a lot of information, so they need to go through a single process in order to facilitate the selection. And sometimes that uniqueness, that particular elements that you bring are not fully visible in them. And another element that is very important to have in mind, yes. First, the process that is the same for everyone, no matter how good you are. And the second, there is a secret, the selection process in the European institutions. There is a hidden document, the book of secrets, of the book of spells, call it whatever you want, that contains all the information, that contains everything. If it's a competition, it's called the notice of competition. But if it's for a cast or for a contract agent, for temporary, usually it's the vacancy. It's called the vacancy notice. There, the information is there. Okay. The test that you need to go through, the requirements for the position. You need to be fluent in Cantonese. Okay, it should be in the notice. The languages, as I mentioned, one example, the task and everything else need to be described there. I'm saying this because experience tells us that people don't read. Honestly, they don't pay much attention to all the information. They just read a couple of lines, a couple of paragraphs, and that's it. And they're missing the key parts of the vacancy notice, where everything is well explained. Salary, selection process, dates, everything is there. Should be more or less there. So it's important that you start any application, any process in the European institutions by reading these elements. Maybe it's old-fashioned, but still, it's the most useful advice we can give you today. Read the notice, read the vacancy, so you will have a big advantage compared to the rest of the candidates, because the rest of the candidates, they tend not to read anything. That's one thing. Now, let's talk about the contract themselves a little bit more. So contractual agent CAST, it's rather famous. Probably you have heard about it. If it's the first time that you hear about it, don't worry, it won't be the last. There is 19 different profiles. It's in principle, it's a contract limited for 6 years, and it contains 4 different levels. Each level is associated to a certain academic level, meaning FG1, should be only people who has the basic education. FG2, it's already secondary education that you already got. Third level, FG3 should be already who have a medium diploma, not university education yet. University degree is the level 4. Being honest and transparent, many candidates, they go for FG3 because it's the most abundant type of contract. So you will find that everybody who's in FG3, they already got a university degree. So those are the possibilities. Of course, depending on the level of these contracts, 1, 2, 3, or 4, the salary goes according. So the requirements for the position. It's that for level 1, for level 2, 3, and 4, you need to pass an exam, CBT, the CBT computer-based test. I know some of you have heard that you need to pass also a knowledge exam, some kind of knowledge exam. That was the case in the past, not since 2023 that they modified the notice of this kind of contract. The basic document, the call for the contract agent, was modified and only required that you pass the computer-based test, and you only need to pass. That's it. And of course, an interview. Can there be other tests? Yes, could be possible, but then if it's so, it should be indicated in the vacancy notice. If you have to pass any other kind of test or assessment or anything else, it's unlikely. Most common scenarios, you need to pass this test and the interview, and that's it. Important to know that you need to register in EPSO in the database. It's pretty straightforward. You will have the link in the document when you get it. To move, it's important also to move in the sense that even if you're in the database, they are not looking for you. You will see on the EPSO webpage, it's marked the number of candidates that are in the database, and there are thousands. So will they find me there? Probably by random search, it's unlikely. But when there is a vacancy, you need to apply. You need to call their attention, submit your CV again, just despite having it in the database. You have to recandidate, reapply, so you get shortlisted and invited to take the exam, because this exam that I mentioned before only can be done by invitation. It's not free access. You can know, I already in the database. Should I get an invitation? No. You need to be in a process, in a selection process, shortlist process, in order to get an invitation. So, and also another important thing, sometimes you come across the opportunity, okay, I'm invited for the computer-based test for a contract level 4, for a contract level 3. Which one should I choose? Our advice is always to choose the level 4. Why? Because if you pass level 4, automatically the level 3, level 2, and level 1 are passed. While the contrary is not valid. If you got level 3, level 4 is not passed automatically. So they convalidate, they acknowledge as pass the lower levels of each profile. When I say each profile, if you look here, the whole list of profiles, you'll see that we have communication. And in communication, we have, for instance, level 3 and 4. So you could be invited to one of them. If it's up to you, try always to go for the higher. Because you can be higher later as level 3, despite having the exam pass in the level 4, and so on. It's always interesting to bear that in mind. So that's for the contract agents. But another element that we have is for the temporary agents. So what's the big difference between the contract agent and the temporary agents? First of all, the exam. You saw that for the contract agents, for the cast, they have to pass the computer-based test. And the second, and for the temporary agents, they don't. You only have to pass an interview unless the vacancy notice include any other test. That could be sometimes they being written tests or some other kind of exams could be included. But again, it should be set in the vacancy notice. Otherwise, it's not valid, the possibility of the exam. And that's the first thing. And the second big difference is that while the contract agent is a kind of auxiliary contract, the temporary agent is just like becoming an officer, with the single difference that temporary agent finish after 1, 2, 3, up to 6 years, while the officer, it's until the person, the officer, retires. That's the big difference, so meaning that he has a higher salary, for instance. It's also good to know when these positions, when you see a vacancy notice, sometimes it's not for one single position, but for a list of reserves, what they call. So they organized a whole selection process to select, instead of one, to select 5, 10 candidates, 100. We have seen all kind of lists. And from there, the institution which organized the process for the temporary agents, it's calling the candidates later, so they don't have to reorganize any other process. Yep. So you are in a list of reserve or list of temporary agents or agents for future contracts. So that's one thing. Second thing is that the agencies that we saw first, they tend to have a lot of these contracts. And when it's in an agency, usually this contract has no limitation. While if you work as a temporary agent, agent temporaire, in the commission, it's up to 6 years. In the agency, usually it's linked to the duration of the entity, meaning if my agency is lasting, it's foreseen to last 20 years, my contract will have a 20 years duration. That's it. So that's excellent. For those of you working who get a temporary contract in the commission, as a second advantage, it gives you access to internal competitions. It gives you access to the possibility of becoming an officer via the internal competitions. I didn't mention this possibility for the contract agents, for the cast. It's possible, yes, there is at least one process that allow contract agents, but it's not the most common. While for the temporary agents, almost for all the processes, they can apply. So that's the big advantage, the access to these internal competitions to formalize your position as indefinite agent later. By the way, I mentioned briefly the salaries before I mentioned. So here you have a good example. You see on the left, you see the cast contract agent salaries for level 4, level 13 and 14. You see that it's around 4,400, rounding up, or almost 3,900. Level 3 is a bit lower, so we see 3,500 more or less. While for the temporary agents, the salaries are like an officer, so meaning that we are starting to talk from 5,400 euros and above, depends on the level. So that makes the temporary agents more interesting, and that's why also contract agents are 24% of the staff force in the commission, and the temporary is only 5%. Money talks. Sorry, people, this is life. So yeah, but what about the other contracts? Interim. This is a type of contract that is a short-term contract. Could be as short as a week, 1 week. Also, it could be extended in time for months, even years. So there is no limitation. Although there is one condition, rules doesn't allow to have more than 6 months extension of this type of contract. So people who are working as interimer, after 6 months, they have to stop for 1 month to be hired again under the same contract. It's not ideal, we know, but it has the advantage that you're already inside the institutions, and it allows you to know better the institution from the inside and to move from that contract to other type of contracts. cast, contract agent, temporary. It's not the same when they know you, when they don't know you. Then a small test may be required by the temporary employment agency. On that sense, you will see on the next slide the names are the well-known companies that they are in charge of finding the people for the institutions. It's true that the profiles for these kind of contracts usually are more secretary assistant level, not policy officer, not higher ranking. But again, it's a entrance door. It's a way of just joining the institutions through this channel, and then from here move to a better position later. So it's always something to be considered. And also, it's a process that goes quite fast. Remember that. I mean, it's a process that once you are in the list of these companies of temporary employment, they could call you the next day to start working, and it's Thursday, and it's to start working on Monday. So you need to be quite attentive to this possibility. By the way, I mentioned the agencies. The agencies are here. They are also available on the episode webpage. So this is public information where you can find or best advice we can give you. Check these agencies, submit your CV, tell them that you're available, and if possible, and you're in Brussels or in Luxembourg, go to visit the offices to show them that you really are in the city, that you are available, because that will make a difference. They receive a lot of CVs, they receive a lot of applications from from candidates from all Europe, and they tend to pay more attention to those who they really know they are already available in Brussels. So, or in Luxembourg, as I said. So it's always an insider tip that we know it works better. And don't be very worried about the exam of the test they may ask you to do, because it should be something easy just to verify that you know how to use your laptop and how to do your stuff. Yep. We are moving toward the junior professional program. Yep. This is a program that it was developed a few years ago to select the best stagiaires in the European institutions. Nowadays, it's not only for stagiaires, it's also for contract agents who can participate here and to select among the best. The thing is that it has that requirement that you have to be already inside the commission to work in this program, but it's a very limited program. It's small, and you have to pass a computer-based test. That's one thing, and you have to pass different interviews to be selected. So it's not the easiest program, but it's true that it's quite rewarding, because after that, you have access to a temporary agent position, say 5, as an officer, and it gives you also access to the internal competitions. So that's why it becomes quite interesting. And we mentioned before that it's not only the commission. You can find this program also for the stagiaires of the parliament, the Summon stagiaires, and they call it Summon Recruitment and Development Program. The difference with the commission is that the contracts are cast contracts. They are not a temporary. But for the rest, seems quite similar, in that sense, to the one done by the commission. So it's another possibility that you may have to stay in the European Union. And last but not least, especially for those of you who, if you're working in national administration, public administration, the second national expert. So for this one, you absolutely need to be an official in your national administration. It starts with 1 year and can be renewed until up to 6 years. But also the duration depends on how much time your national authority wants to send you, wants to have you there. Usually access via interview. And remember, it's very important. This is managed by national authorities. This is not managed by EPSO or by the European Commission. They just open the vacancy, and the national authorities, they submit the candidates, they manage the preliminary process, and the commission only organize the panel to select the candidate via interview. That's it. So this is important that you stay in contact with your national authorities for this possibility. Of course, There is another option that has more spots, but it's very short in time. It's the National Experts in Professional Training, NEPs, they're called. It's 4 or 5 months in the commission working. It's a kind of mini Erasmus. Very nice and very always interesting to understand better the work done and to see if, okay, I would like to go back. I will try for an SNE later, but I will start with a NEP possibility, short term. I mean, there's plenty of people in the national administration who have done like that. They started as short term, for a few months. They like it. Then they did everything in their hand to come back a few months or a few years later to stay longer in the commission. They work there as a national experts, and after a few years, they pass a competition, concours, and they become officers of the European institutions. So there's plenty of candidates who have gone through that process. The only setback of this is that it's not valid for internal competitions. You cannot go through this process and be part of the internal concours organized by the commissions, for instance. And this is it regarding the type of contract. Hope this is a bit more clear now. Oh, how can you start to work for the commission, the council, the parliament, and all the different institutions of the European universe? So about the process, very briefly, because there's always how much time does it take? Should I dedicate it exclusively to find a job as a contract agent, as a temporary agent? Our answer is no, usually, because the process tends to last several months. So then first part, you create a profile in the episode database. There is no deadline for that, and you can always redraft this application. That's the beauty of this part. And that's the single time that in a process, in a selection process, you can do that for the cast. In any other process, temporary competitions, you never have the opportunity to redraft your application. But in the cast, yes. You need to be selected for a process, what we mentioned before, be proactive, finding your vacancy, your notice, applying for the position. Then you will be invited for the computer-based test. Yes, it appears below, but I will leave to Stitch to mention more on that part. And then you may be invited to a knowledge exam, interview, or examination of other kind. Unlikely that it's anything else than an interview. And then it will come the recruitment. It's up to 1 month to several months. It's strange that it lasts less than 1 month or 1 month. Usually consider a couple of months, 3 months. So the whole process can take 3, 4 months easily. 6, 7 also possible. So this is not fast. Guys, the European institutions, when we are talking about recruitment, they are a very good place to work, but not the fastest in the recruitment policy. So just remember that. Otherwise, you will get frustrated. And you can see about the dates and the process also on the EPSO website. So this is a typical screenshot from the EPSO website where you can see the possibilities to apply to the different profiles, the number of candidates who are in each profile, and the date of the following or next exam, 14 of you, as we mentioned before. For a temporary agent, it will be more or less the same. So you need to create an application, send your curriculum. Sorry for the typo, but I don't know what happened there. So you will need to be selected for process in the then interview, and also sometimes you will have to do the written test before or later. After the interview, that depends on the process. It will be indicated in the notice or in the vacancy. For sure, then the interview, another test, depends which one early. Also, sometimes what they do is they organize a writing test as a first step. They correct it, and then afterwards they invite you to the second part. So it means that it will take weeks or even months between the first part and the second part. Something to bear in mind. And again, then it's a process that takes months from the very first moment the submission of your application to the end. Okay, so Need to be careful with that. And this is it on this part. But now let's talk a little bit more interesting part, that is the test that you will face. But probably that's teach you, the expert who will talk you about that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to try to explain you the next point. Yeah, what test will I face and how do I pass them? So, well, the tests we will have to face to pass the CAST process are, well, first the application, the CBT, the written test, depending on the process, and the interview. So let's go through them by one. First one, the application. Well, it's important to note that the process begins upon registration, yeah, for any vacancy. The first test will always be the application. So keep it in mind, yeah. And of course, it's related to your CV and your experience, yeah. So well, here are some key points, yeah, for submitting a good application. The first one, well, prepare the application with a great care because there is no possibility to modify it. Yeah, we have to be very sure of what we include in the application because we are not able to modify it later. Well, the second point, well, keep in mind that it takes some time to fill it out. Yeah, you won't be able to do it in, I don't know, 10 minutes. It requires dedicating time to do it well. So, well, take your time to do this application. Well, in the best way, yeah. The next one, pay close attention to silly mistakes. Yeah, a silly mistake in the application can make a difference, yeah, and not in a good way. So this part of the process requires a lot of attention. It may look silly sometimes, but please pay attention to the application because it's very important. Well, also remember that all the information requested is provided in the vacancy notice, yeah, on the description. So, well, we can tailor what we are going to include in the application, yeah, because we know what are they looking for, so we can do this much regarding on our experience. Try, yeah, whenever you are doing this application, try to include only the relevant information. Yeah, they don't want to see any filling information. They only want you to include the relevant information for the process. So now, well, here are some general tips, yeah, for preparing a good application. And the first one, will create different profiles. Yeah, it's important to create different profiles for the different processes, yeah, and only present the relevant information for each case, yeah. You should, well, create different profiles, with different information. Well, the second one, as mentioned before, there is no possibility of modification and it's a time-consuming process, yeah. Therefore, well, it's best to take the necessary time to prepare the application and adjust your CV to match the profile to this vacancy notice, yeah, as closely as possible. The third tip, well, when preparing the application, you can use the words used in the vacancy notice, yeah. So this way you can incorporate to your application the keywords that they are showing you in that vacancy notice so that you can show that your experience really matches with the work that you are supposed to do if you pass that process. The next tip, well, it's important, very, very important to explain your experience. I mean, it may seem very obvious to you sometimes, but maybe it's not obvious for the evaluators. So always explain your experience. Yeah, explain everything. The next tip, update your candidate or your application regularly. Yeah, and try to ensure that you always have the most up-to-date information on your profiles, because these processes will take time, so it's important to always have the profiles updated. And the last one, well, you may have a great profile, but they don't know about you. So you have to move. Yeah, it's important to reach out to different entities, be proactive, and make yourself visible. Yeah, as Inigo was saying, well, maybe go into the different offices or something because they don't know you and they have a lot of profiles, a lot of people asking for something. So it's better to move. Yeah. Well, this is very quickly all about the application. Remember, it's always the best step, the first test of any process. So now let's move on to the CBT. The CBT, or computer-based test, well, it consists on 3 exercises: the verbal reasoning, the numerical reasoning, and abstract reasoning. The first one, the verbal reasoning. Well, in this test, we will be presented with a short test on any topic, yeah, similar to what you see on the slide, and we have to deduce which option should be correct. Well, in this test, our ability to understand key concepts, yeah, and our deductive reasoning skills are measured. So, well, these are the key points, yeah. Well, the keys to do well these types of exercises. Well, we need to read the text. Yeah, we need to read the text and the questions very carefully, and of course the answer options. Be careful not to assume concepts that are not in the text. Yeah, you may know something more about a specific topic, or you may imagine something, but be careful. Only assume the concepts that are in the text, yeah, on that exercise. Then, well, when choosing the correct answer, we need to be careful to distinguish between the false answers from the doubtful ones. Yeah, be careful with this. The next point, well, keep in mind that a small detail in an answer option can make a difference. Yeah, so well, be careful with it. And also, well, keep in mind also that omitting part of the information in an answer does not make it incorrect. Yeah, maybe you read the text, then you read the answer options, and maybe the answer option is omitting some kind of information, but the option is correct. Yeah, I mean, be careful with these little details, because well, you made ups, but well, these details are the ones that they want to see in these types of reasoning tests. And oh, well, the last one, be careful with the frequencies. Typically, when there are those very strong frequencies, like always, never, all, these kind of frequencies, well, when they appear, most of the times, that answer it's not going to be the correct one. So, well, these are a little bit the most important points regarding the verbal reasoning, but this is verbal reasoning. Yeah, as you have seen, it's about reasoning, yeah, from a text. But this test doesn't aim to measure your language, yeah, your language proficiency. So it's a reasoning test. This is important. So this is it with the verbal reasoning. Now let's move on to the numerical reasoning. Well, in numerical reasoning exercises, well, you will be presented with a problem, yeah, that you will have to solve using numbers. Typically, the exercise consists of a text and a table or a graph, yeah, although there may be exercises where they only have the text. Well, we will see, yeah. This test aims to measure the ability to identify the relevant data, yeah, as well as the ability to identify the fastest way to solve the problem. Yeah, we want to do as few operations as possible. Yeah, it's also very beneficial if we are able to do quick mental calculations. Yeah, and this can help us solving some exercises without needing to use the calculator or the notepad or anything. So this mental agility is very, very important to the numerical reasoning, and you can train it. So, well, the keys to do this to do well this type of exercises, well, well, there are several things to consider. Firstly, we need to have, well, certain concepts very, very clear. Yeah, which concepts? Well, fractions, percentages, equations, the rule of three, and all these basic concepts, we have to have them very, very clear. Well, secondly, we need to read the question presented to us very carefully, and we have to be able to identify the necessary data, because, well, as you will see when you start practicing, we usually don't need all the data provided. Yeah, so well, keep it in mind. And lastly, we'll keep in mind again that it's possible to use estimation to solve some exercises. Yeah, we don't always need to perform a specific operation. Yeah, sometimes estimation is the fastest and the best way to solve an exercise. So well, here in the last point, well, you will have the solution, yeah, to the exercise you have on the slide, just in case you want to try it, yeah, and you have the solution in the link. All right, let's move on to the abstract reasoning now. Well, in these exercises, we'll be given a sequence of 5 figures, yeah, and we have to find the 6th one, the 6th figure that would correspond to that sequence. We'll have to choose from 5 possible options, yeah. Well, in these cases, they will only present figures in black and white, yeah. There won't be any colored element. So we'll also keep in mind that if there is any change in size in any of these elements that make up the figure, this change will be easily perceptible, yeah. So well, no problem on that part. So the keys to do well these exercises, well, we need to look for the different rules that may be present among the fields, yeah. And we have to look for patterns, and we have to make sure that the patterns we identify apply to all the elements in the series. Yeah, we can't focus just on one thing, and we have to consider all the elements that we have on the exercise. Well, the best approach is to eliminate the options that we clearly see that cannot be correct. Yeah, in that sense, well, we'll have less possible options to the exercise. Well, to search for patterns that may exist in an exercise, it's a good strategy, or it can be a good strategy to isolate each element that makes up the figure and analyze it. Analyze the behavior independently. Yeah. So once we do it with all the elements, we can combine all the behaviors and we will have the correct option. But well, it can depend on the exercise. But well, this is it about the abstract reasoning. Now let's move on to the written test. Well, the written test is not mandatory in CAST. Yeah, its completion depends on the entity recruiting the candidates. It's usually a common exercise in the temporary agent process. Yeah, as Inigo just mentioned before. So first, let's go over the key points, yeah, of this exercise. Well, it's related to the tasks of the position. Yeah. For this exercise, we are typically presented with a topic or situation kind of related to the tasks that we have to be carrying out in the new position. So well, the written test is going to be related to that new situations. Well, additionally, it's a competency exam. Yeah. Although it's related to the tasks of the position, it doesn't aim to measure your knowledge in that area, but well, it aims to measure a set of competencies. These competencies are specified in each vacancy notice, so you will have all the information. But well, they are usually related to communication. Yeah, well, to offer effective communication, we need to analyze all the information, prioritize, organize the information, self-management, and one. All these competencies that are going to be described on the vacancy notice. So you have all the information there. Well, also, it's also crucial to understand the instructions very, very well. We must pay close attention to what we are being asked to do and how it's requested. Yeah, failing to notice a detail provided in the instructions, well, can mean the difference between submitting a complete exercise or an incomplete one. So please read all the instructions and understand the instruction very, very well. And the last one, well, we must be able to handle a lot of information under time pressure. Yeah, we'll have a lot of information to analyze, we'll have a lot of information to organize, and the time we have for this is very, very limited. It's a test where we can't afford to lose a single minute of concentration. So keep it in mind, yeah. We have to be very, very focused. And regarding the structure of this written test, well, we'll be provided with a booklet consisting on several documents. The number and length of the documents can vary. Yeah, there is no fixed number, so well, no keys in that part. The second point, well, we will have to complete the exercise in the interface or in Word, but our advice is to get used not using the autocorrect feature during practice, yeah, so we can focus more on avoiding these spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes, because, well, in the exam, maybe you won't have that help. The third point, well, the time for this test can vary from 30 minutes to 2 hours. It depends a lot on each process. However, well, the most important thing is to devise a strategy for the time given. Yeah, how many minutes will I spend on analyzing and planning all the information? How many minutes on the development of the text? And how many minutes for the review? Yeah, we always reserve several minutes to this revision, yeah, to review the text to ensure we don't leave anything incomplete. And finally, well, keep in mind that there is no possibility of consulting external sources. Yeah. The only information we can use for the development of the exercise is what is provided on the booklet, nothing else. Yeah, we can't supplement or we can't complete this information with any external information. When the topic is related to your area or expertise, this can be difficult sometimes, so well, be careful with it. And well, this is that's all about the written text. Now, well, here you have some advices, just some general advices for the CBT and the written text. Well, the first ones are more related to the CBT. The first one, well, familiarize yourselves with the environment. Try to do the exercises in a real exam-like situation. Well, set the time you will have for each exercise, because, well, on the vacancy notice you will have specified how many minutes you will have for the verbal reasoning, how many minutes you will have for the abstract reasoning, and how many minutes you will have for the numerical reasoning. And knowing the number of questions that you have for each one of the tests, you can know how many minutes can you spend on each exercise. Usually 1-2 minutes. Yeah, 1 minute for the abstract reasoning, 2 minutes for the numerical. This is it, more or less. So set the time you will have for the exercise while you are practicing. Yeah, that's the time you will have in the exam. And also doing it from home, you won't be able to have any physical items. Everything will be on the screen. And when we say everything, we mean everything. No pen, no paper, no calculator, nothing. You will have everything on the screen. So our recommendation is to practice like this. Okay, the second tip, for the numerical reasoning, keep in mind that the calculator doesn't give you the solution. Well, it's useless to start doing many operations with the calculator if we don't know what we are operating. Yeah, and well, this point is related to the next one, that it's think first, act later. Well, it's important to make good use of the time we have for each exercise, because the time is very, very limited. So, well, we have to think things before starting to do anything. The fourth tip, well, it's reasoning, yeah, nothing else. This is important, whether it's verbal, numerical, or abstract. It's reasoning, yeah. It's not language knowledge, it's not mathematic knowledge, it's reasoning. So, well, what's measured is your ability to reason through the situations that they are presenting you. But it's always about reasoning. And the last one, the fifth one can fit for the CBT and the written. Yeah, the nerves are your worst enemy. We have to try to control our nerves, and if at any point, well, nerves blocks us, yeah, well, we can move to the next question. For example, in the CBT, we get nervous, we get blocked, so we can move on to the next question. Yeah, we have to avoid wasting time. And in the CBT, well, in general, the incorrect answers don't deduct points. So we always have to make sure that we mark some options in all the questions. Yeah, we don't leave any question unanswered. And the last tip is more related to the written test, because remember that you can practice the written on your own. Yeah, it's very important to practice these written tests too. Don't think it's something you can't practice, because, well, you can do it. And it's very important to dedicate time to practice this writing, this good communication, so that, well, on the day of the exam, you will have the ease and you will have the ability to be more flexible, yeah, depending on what they are asking. So these are a little bit the main tips regarding the CBT and the written. And now let's move on to another test, yeah, the interview. The interview can be conducted in online or in person, yeah, depending on the organizer's decision. So some key points to consider. Well, these interviews are practical in nature. Yeah, they want to know how you do things. Yeah, they want to know how you handle problems, how you manage certain situations, how you adapt to yourselves to new scenarios. Yeah, so this is the focus you have to have in this kind of interviews. Well, keep in mind that during the interview, you will have at least 3 people in front of you, more than one, usually 3, or at least 3. And, well, it's very important to answer the questions. Yeah, listen to all the questions very, very carefully and make sure that, well, you answer what they are asking. Yeah, not what you imagine they would ask. Yeah, so listen to the questions. And, well, the last point, be consistent with the application submitted. Okay, on the application you are going to submit some information, so remember that in the interview, well, you have to be consistent on that information. You can't say something new, yeah, in these interviews. You have to be consistent. You have to match the information of the application and the information of the interview. And regarding the structure of the interview, well, the duration of the interview can vary. It can be between 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Well, it depends, yeah, on the interview or the organization and everything. They will probably ask you to introduce yourself. So, well, this is something that you can practice. And keep in mind that you cannot take notes during the interview. So please, no pen, no paper, nothing, because you are not allowed to take notes. And now, well, here are some general tips for the interview. The first one, well, read the vacancy notice. Yeah, read it. All the details are specified there. So please read it. Yeah, know what can be they asking. Yeah, this is important. Read always the vacancy notice. The second one, well, prepare a brief self-introduction. Yeah, 2-3 minutes. Well, because, well, as I said, is likely that they will ask for it. So, well, it's good to have it solid. Yeah, a solid introduction ready, just in case they ask for it. Okay, you already have it. The third one, well, practice the interview. Yeah, just like practicing for the CBT and the written test, it's important practicing for the interview. Think about what information can you present and how can you present that information. Yeah, you can practice this for this interview. And, well, when answering the questions, well, it's important to provide a very, very clear structure. With a well-structured response, you will be able to convey more information in less time. Yeah, and it will be easier for the evaluators to understand you. So please try to always structure your answers. Well, more things. We recommend you to prepare specific examples from your experience. Yeah, think about all the years you have been working and will come up with concrete examples to answer potential interview questions. Yeah, this is something you can practice. Well, another tip is, well, to asking yourself, yeah, how can I help them? Try to tailor your answers to demonstrate how can you contribute, yeah, in the given situation. What can be your contribution? Yeah, why are you important? How can you help them? Yeah, this is a little bit the focus an interesting focus, yeah, to practice a little bit before the interview. And the last one, well, remember that the evaluators don't know anything about you. Yeah, your answer should be self-contained, and well, they should contain all the necessary information because they don't know you. Yeah, this is important. And well, this is all about the tests you will face in a cast process. I hope it has been quite clear. So now I leave you again with my colleague Inigo to continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Stito. So you see all these tests, all these things are the ones that can appear. Not necessarily all of them will be in a process. Some of them can be, some others could be all together. That will be indicated in you guys were in the vacancy notice, in the notice of the position, in the notice of competition. Always there you will find information. Yes, we are quite insistent on this part, but it's because where you find everything. So, but talking about finding, yes, the following question, we are approaching the end. Where do we look for opportunities, right? So, well, the first and obvious place, EPSO web page. Here is supposed to be all the information is supposed to be there. All the vacancies, all the job positions. Yes, in theory, yes. In practice, no, it's not. So you need to visit this web page. You need to master it. You see that now it has improved compared to years ago. So you have a lot of information. You see the different contract types, different categories of jobs or possibilities. So be sure that you master it. But it's true that not everything is here, unfortunately. So it's always good to have in mind the following. So despite being EPSO webs, the main one, you need to look for the entities, the agencies, the institutions, European Central Bank, Court of Auditors, or anything that you're interested. So list them and find if they have a specific web for job application, for job vacancies. Check if they publish any information there. Sometimes they won't republish it in EPSO web page. That's why it's so important to have your own list to check those sites to see the information regularly. I mean, one per week or every 2 weeks will be ideal. Some of them even allow you to subscribe to the newsletter or some kind of warning system. So use it wisely in order to be up to date, because usually they opening the window frame to apply to a competition, to a position, to a vacancy. It's between 2 weeks and 4 weeks, usually no more than that. So also important that you always visit the English version of these webs. But I mean, they are supposed to be in the 24 official languages. Yes, they are supposed to, but they are not always in the 24 official languages. So you need to be sure that you get the latest information. And usually the latest information is uploaded in English. Simple truth. And also don't think that it's because it's the court of auditors, it's only auditors who have a possibility here. No, sometimes they publish job positions that could be for human resources, for logistics, I mean, for many others. It's true that if an institution, an entity is dedicated to a certain area of expertise, most likely scenario, vacancies will be related, but not always. So don't close yourself. Don't think that that there are not positions for you if the profile is not exactly that one, but always with common sense in order to look for. And as I mentioned before, yes, remember to read carefully. Yeah, it's the third time I think I repeat it today, but it could be repeat. I could repeat it again many other times, but this is important because we know what we say at the beginning of today's session, that this is based on real experiences, on real lessons that we have learned through the years. And despite how many times we say it, people tend not to read. And it's a pity because the information is here and you are missing opportunities, you are missing jobs. And this is a hard truth because people didn't read the application, didn't read the vacancy notice. We don't want that for you. We want you to succeed. So reading this document gives you a fair good advantage compared to other candidates. Basically, that's it. But the last question, how can we, from Ya Somos Europeos, help you? Help me on that perspective. So very simple, but effectively. So through free webinars and materials, as today you are attending to one of them. So we organize also trainings for the EPSO competitions, including the CVT training, specific not only for the competitions, but also for the cast for anyone who has this test in front. Also for the internal competition of the institutions, in case you're interested in the future, once you are already a temporary agent or contract agent and you want to participate in one. Also the possibility of organizing application reviews to guarantee that your application is strong enough to get through to the short list and being summoned for a job interview. And also the possibility of preparing job interviews as well, because we mentioned before, it's important to practice. So if you need someone to help you on that practice and give you some tips, also we can do it for you. And of course, let's not forget where you can find us and find the official information. So not a big deal. But at the end, the important thing is, what else do you want to know? What else are the questions that remain in your head and we haven't replied yet? So any question, any comment, or everything was a little bit more or less solved? Open the micro if you want to talk, or just write on the chat.
Hello.
Hello, yes.
First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very useful. I was wondering if someone were to pass the CAST exam, but they are not selected, in the first selection process, can they for the same function group for a different profile without having to do the exam again?
For different profiles, you will have to pass the exam again, probably. But still, unless I'm thinking about legal profile that where they clearly require to be on that profile, sometimes we having the cast in project manager or policy is good enough for most of the positions available. They are not linked to one single profile. So having already passed the cast in one of the profiles should be good enough to get access to the jobs.
Okay. And my other question was in the application process, it asks for 2 languages. So I'm wondering, is the cast in 1 language? Is it in 2 languages, or can we choose?
CAS exams usually are done in one single language. For the CVT, you choose among the 24 languages. They don't ask for a specific one on that part. But then the interviews, we didn't mention, but the most common language is English. Although sometimes during the interview, they may test not your language, but your capacity to reply in any other language that you have declared. If it's so, usually they will say that in the notice or in the vacancy notice, they will specify that interviews will be held in English or French, most common scenarios. But some question could be asked in a different language if the candidate has declared working proficiency in any other language. Or also for the agencies, I'm thinking about that case. It's usually, if not the whole interview, because most likely will be in English, part of the interview can be on the language of the hosting country of the agency. Thinking about, for instance, UIPO in Alicante, you may face an interview where part of it is in Spanish, because that's also very common in the institution as it's already located in Spanish. But for food safety in Parma, in Italy, could be Italian, and so on. That would be the case.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, let me see the chat. I see a question from Josué. Can everyone be a temporary agent? People with that level or academic level, yes, it's possible to find some temporary agents to work as cooks or drivers of the institutions. We have seen it. I mean, if it can be an officer, it can be a temporary agent as well. Or from whichever you can be a temporary agent. I mean, all the positions can be transformed into a temporary agent, but the budgetary limitations always prevent them to have a lot of temporary positions. It's more the money than anything else that prevents to have more profiles or as temporary. Lorenzo, what is the deadline to be invited to the CAS on the 24th, on the 14th of January, of June? So far, used to be a couple of weeks, but now this is a new provider. We don't know if that will change. So, and on what moment EPSO will say that. But in the past, when it was prometric, usually it was 2 weeks before the date of the exam. It was the closing period to get an invitation. And from there, came the date to select the time slot for the exam and so on. Okay, and the second question is, additionally, the wage figures you show us correspond to gross net wage. What is the average tax rate for a job in Brussels? Yep, it's important. It's an important question because for the temporary and the cast contract, you are paying taxes to the institutions, not to Belgian authorities, meaning that it's a big difference because Belgium has a high rate of taxes for the salaries, for the national salaries, but this is it's an international agreement between the member states and the European institutions. So staff working for the European institutions, they pay taxes to the Commission, to the Parliament, to their own institutions. And that rate of taxes is relatively small. We are talking about between 6 and up to 20%, if I remember correctly, for the highest levels. It's proportional to your salary. So meaning that the net salary at the end is very similar to the one that you saw as a gross salary, because it's not included on those table the expatriation allocation. That is 60% extra on your salary that you get for the fact that you are working outside of your home country. So that compensates the taxes and other fees that you may have to pay from your salary. So at the end, what appears on the table is more or less what you get on your bank account. Is that for the intérimaire? The intérimaire is a national contract, it's a Belgian contract. If you're in Belgium, so you will have to pay taxes in Belgium. So meaning it's a higher percentage. I don't know how much because it depends on the amount of the contract and the time that you were working as an intérimaire. Okay. Sorry, sorry. Any other question or comment? Oops, sorry. Seems for the moment they are not. Okay. Well, thanks to all of you who came to our webinar today. It's been a pleasure to host you. We hope that you really got new ideas and inputs on how to get your dream job in the European institutions. Remember, we will upload in the coming days this webinar, so you can rewatch it again, as well as the presentation will be in the comment section to the link to download. Okay, so thank you. And if you want to join us for our next webinar on competitions, that will be tomorrow, same place, same time, same hour.